Hey guys, coming into the movie for guys. Now, this movie reviewing, this is a movie that I really didn't know what to think of. I haven't really heard many people talk about it, but I figured I would check it out, and that is the Netflix movie of the week, because there always is one, that being War Machine. Now, this was a movie that I was very interested in. Netflix so far, I think, has kind of been hit or miss. Like, sometimes they have some really good ones, and sometimes they don't. I don't really think they've had a genuinely great movie since Beast in No Nation or Fundamentals of Care. Those movies are really great, but most of their films have been middle of the road to just good. They haven't been anything amazing, and War Machine really seemed like one of the most confident projects. I mean, just the cast, what everyone was saying with this movie. I mean, just the fact they were able to get everyone they could. I was definitely interested in seeing how this movie would turn out, and I watched the trailer, didn't really think much of it, so I went into this fairly kind of open-minded, but also not really sure what I was really getting myself into. And as it turns out, War Machine is unfortunately really not that good. I was really not a huge fan of this movie. I wish I could say I was, but I don't really think that it really was that great. The basic plot of this film is pretty simple. We got this general here, Glenn McMahon, played by Brad Pitt. He is this 4-star general, and he's very dedicated. We can see the war in Afghanistan has been going on for quite some time, and he's quite frustrated. He really is just ready to bring it to an end, but after he ends up on this television appearance and starts to basically say some things against the president, he finds himself to make things a lot worse than he does, and there are a lot more personal attacks to him than there were before, and that's the basic plot of War Machine overall. But let's just get into this movie, starting off with the cast. And let me just say, starting off with this film, the cast is not the problem in this movie. Acting-wise, this is a very well-done film. I don't really think there's anyone here that gave necessarily a bad performance. It's more the screenplay, which we'll get into. But Brad Pitt in this movie, I thought genuinely did a really good job as Glenn McMahon. You know, he does a good job of what he had here, kind of portraying that gruff sort of military general. I thought overall he definitely did a good job with that. You know, he definitely has that hubris down very well. Again, you can tell this is a general that's kind of fed up. He really does want to make a change, and he really does want things to end, but it just doesn't really seem to be going that well for him. So I liked his character, that overall he definitely did a good job. The problem is he's supposed to be funny, and he definitely does try. I think he definitely did try to put a lot into his character. His character in general, I just didn't really find to be all that interesting. I think he really was not that great here, but out of everyone, I will say he definitely was the best. I really did like his performance here. I thought overall he definitely did do a great job. It's more his character, which we'll get into, that's kind of the problem. Ben Kingsley is someone I was definitely looking forward to in this movie as President Hamid Karzai, who actually is the president of Afghanistan, and unfortunately he is incredibly underused. There's this one kind of funny scene with him involving a Blu-ray player, and I'm like, alright, this is really great interplay between these two, setting up more to come, and unfortunately, he's not really in this movie that much. I mean, he's billed as like the second main character, but he's really not in this movie nearly as much as I expect him to be. It really does suck, because I was expecting a lot more from him in this movie, and unfortunately, I just didn't really get that. I wanted more, but he just didn't really do much for me, I have to say. I really wanted more from his character, and I just, like I said, I didn't really get that that screen time that I was hoping to get with him. I think he could have done a really good job here, and they set some good stuff up with his character, but I just don't really think they did enough with him. And the rest of the characters in this movie, they're fine. Anthony Hayes, Emory, Cohen, RJ Cyler, all give good performances. It's just their characters in general, I just didn't really find to be all that memorable, to be honest with you. They were kind of just all disposable. I didn't really think much of them, and when it really does come to this film, that really is the main problem, is that the cast in general, while good, just don't really have the most compelling of characters. So now let's get into my real problems with War Machine, starting off with the directing. The directing here by David Michod essentially is the main problem in this movie, because while this movie is a war film, it's not supposed to be a film that's taken all that seriously. In fact, it's supposed to be something in vein of Doctor Strangelove, or, you know, something of that nature, like a political satire, and unfortunately, it fails on almost every level. The jokes here are not only just trying way too hard to get a laugh out, which they do a lot throughout the movie. most of them don't really make a ton of sense, and a lot of them really do fall flat. I laughed maybe about 3 times this entire movie, and that really sucks when this movie is supposed to be a satire of war films, and it really did not work, I have to say. I really did not think the humor was that great here. I didn't really think it was balanced that well. There's one really funny scene involving Skype that I thought was absolutely hilarious, but other than that, I only found like a couple of laughs throughout this movie. I chuckled a few times, but that's the only scene I genuinely did laugh at. I have to say, I don't really think the humor worked very well here. And in general, I don't really think this needed to be a humorous movie. I get that obviously that's what they were trying to do, but I don't really think that worked out very well. Because when this movie's serious, it actually works quite well. It gets quite dark in the third act, and I thought that it actually worked a lot better for them. Like, all right, I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to get into this movie, because finally it was taking itself a little bit seriously. The problem is, the tone is really all over the place, and it's not just like through acts, it's by scene to scene. One scene might be really serious, then it'll turn to a silly scene, then it'll turn to something comedic, then it'll try to be something heartfelt, or it'll try to be something, ridiculous or mocking someone, and it just really does not work at all. I really felt like the director didn't know how to balance those two tones. It seemed like he was trying to be a lot of things. Like, sometimes this movie's trying to be like a Martin Scorsese film, or sometimes this movie is trying to be like Scarface or something like that, or The Wolf of Wall Street even. Sometimes this movie's trying to be like Inglourious Bastards, and sometimes it's trying to be like a serious war film. And those tones, they just don't really work here. They clash a lot throughout this movie, unfortunately, and I was really hoping for a much better, tonal film, but unfortunately the tone just didn't really work, I have to say. And the main problem with that is the screenplay. The story in this movie just isn't all that interesting, I have to tell you. I really did not find myself to get that invested in the story, and that's because these characters just aren't really that interesting. A lot of them are very throwaway. They tried to do more with them in the third act of the movie. Like I said, I think the third act of the movie is the strongest part. Like, the last 20 or so minutes are actually genuinely good. It was better than what most of the movie was, because most of this movie is just a bunch of talking scenes and a bunch of them trying to figure out how to handle this whole situation and things like that. I just didn't really find it to be all that interesting, I have to say. I found it to be quite boring. Once it actually turns into a war movie and we actually get some good violent stuff, that I thought was good. But the screenplay in general, the characters just really weren't interesting. I found them to be very middle ground, and I just didn't really care about any of them. And the movie really wants you to. Like, it really harkens on these characters. There are some scenes where Brad Pitt, he's feeling very beside himself, and he has a lot of mental breakdowns this movie, but you just don't really care because they didn't really do that great of a job developing his character. He just really is not that interesting, I have to say, and it sucks because I think they could have done a lot more with that. And unfortunately, the screenplay as well, like I said, it just, the laugh stuff I didn't really understand. Like, why did this need to be a comedy? It felt very off from the rest of the movie, especially when it turned to a more serious film. It just worked better that way. I don't really think this needed to be a comedy because, again, it just didn't really work in my opinion. I felt like the comedy stuff, it just really was not there. The comedic beats did not really go at all, and it sucks because I think it could have worked a lot better. And there's some good actors in this movie, definitely. Like, Topher Grace is a really funny guy. Ben Kingsley can be really funny. Brad Pitt even can be really funny. The kid from RJ Cyler from Power Rangers, he can be really funny. But I just didn't really think it worked that well, I have to say. And the movie also is very boring. The scenes go on for far too long. There were not many scenes that I was really into. It's one of those movies where it just kind of went on and on and on. And it's 2 hours long. It honestly felt like 3 hours. It really did. I was not into this movie, I have to say. I thought the editing it really did not benefit the film that well. I will say, cinematography is great to this movie. I thought the cinematography was very well done. I thought you really did get that sense, especially when they're in the war scenes. The tension is really good there, and there's a lot of scenes where you don't really know how it's going to turn out. So I will say it is an unpredictable film, and I thought the cinematography worked very well. And the score as well, the score is very strange. Sometimes it'll be like the serious song, then it'll turn to like this dance music. There's a lot of scenes of them just dancing, and I don't really know what that's all about, but the cinematography I thought was good. I really did love the cinematography throughout this movie. Other than that, guys, though, I really did not find much to like about War Machine. Like I said, the last few minutes of it actually do get really good, especially the direction that Brad Pitt's character goes into. I really did enjoy. The problem is the movie gets interesting. Once it gets interesting, the movie's over after that, and it really does suck because I'm like, all right, this is really starting to get interesting, and I was kind of upset to realize that the movie was actually over, and I don't think that, I think the movie already kind of put itself into this hole it was hard to get out of, and they tried to, but it was just kind of too late for them to do that. So overall, guys, War Machine is an incredibly middle-of-the-road film. It's not really a movie I'm going to remember, unfortunately. I think they made an attempt to satirize the war genre, and I'm always on board with those kind of films, because you guys know I'm not a huge fan of war movies. I find a lot of them to be very much the same, and there's only so many stories you can tell with that, but I really thought they could have done a really good job with this, but they just didn't really find the stuff to make it funny, and I just didn't really feel like they had much to work with, honestly. It wastes a ton of very talented actors, and it really is making me upset that they were in this film, because they are very talented, and they could have given them a lot more to do, and they tried to in the third act of the movie, but unfortunately, it's just too late for them to do that. In general, guys, I really was very disappointed by War Machine, and I am going to give War Machine overall a 2 out of 5 or a C-. So overall, guys, from here of War Machine. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. You have seen, loved your thoughts. Now, I know a lot of people have not seen this movie, and honestly, it's not really worth checking out. It's another very disposable Netflix film, and it really does suck. Netflix has not made that great movie, I think, since really Beast of No Nation. That was the big film for them, and ever since then, they really have not been able to live up to the masterpiece that that film really was. And I'm hoping that Okja, at the end of next month, can really pull themselves out of that hole. But that's my review. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for Doctor Who. I know I'm behind like 5 episodes, but I am going to catch up, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.